Hey guys, how's it going? Just Kyra here with another Awaken Chaos Era video, and in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the top 3 legendary heroes to pick from the rookie summons here in the beginning of Awaken Chaos Era. In the beginning of the game, when you get to 2-8, you could do your rookie summons, and then it's randomly going to choose 3 different legendary heroes you could pick from in a 10 pull. Or you can go with no legendary heroes and pick 2 epics. I just recommend against that. But out of those 3 legendary heroes that are random, you have 7 total options. So if you just keep resetting your beginning of the game and getting to 2-8, you can pick that exact legendary hero you want. And there's only 7 total ones. I'll show on the screen here, also in the thumbnail, you see all 7. I'm going to talk about the top 3 ones in my opinion. After going through this game for quite a bit now, I think there's clear and cut better ones than the others, especially when it comes to early game progression and then later on ones you'll actually still be using later on in the game. You also could end up just pulling all these heroes as you progress, but they are legendary heroes. They are going to be quite rare. Picking the best one is going to make a pretty big difference going forward on your account. The first one I think is one of the best, if not the best, is going to be EVERA here. I like her a lot from a damage perspective. So in the beginning of the game, you want a lot of good AoE damage, and she's going to provide that really well. And her modifiers scale well into the late game. She has this move here that's going to be anywhere from 150 to 200% damage. That's a massive modifier. And then she's able to grant attack up to this character for 3 turns after that, which is great. So then her next move, she's going to hit way harder. And then she has this passive here where +1 rage per valid hit on the enemy converts all rage into a bonus attack. So when she does her ult here, it's going to guarantee her passive proc, so she's going to be able to do her bonus attack. Then she has a great A2, which deals 100% damage to an enemy when fully booked, removes a positive effect from the target as a utility there, and then if affected by attack up, then launches a bonus attack with gunfire. So you synergize really well with her own kit, where she can ult, then go again, and also is giving herself attack up. Then her A2 synergizes well with the buff that she's going to get another AoE bonus attack. Auto attack is actually quite good. 80% damage to an enemy with a 30% chance to apply bleeding for 2 turns. Bleeding's a pretty solid damaging debuff. If affected by attack up, then launches a bonus attack with gunfire. So her whole kit is constantly allowing her to AoE if she has attack up, and so she's constantly going with gunfire. And when you finally get to 4 rage, which is a little bit more difficult when you're not ulting, she's going to be able to constantly keep going again. So a very good character, especially right now at the time of recording, because later on, she's actually is a very useful character in high-end arena. One of the best nukers and does well against a lot of the blue affinity characters you're going to be facing in high-end arena at the moment. That might change. Maybe a whole bunch of fire characters are going to become meta way later on if you're watching this video later. But at the moment, there's a lot of blue heroes that you see on arena defense that are actually really hard to beat. And she's one of the best heroes at being able to handle that. So if we look at the rank here, there's a ton of people. You see a lot of Blackhorns, a lot of Hackrons. Those are the main 2 that you're going to see a ton of in a lot of these teams on arena offense. Like they're going to have those people on arena defense. You're going to see them on arena offense. Yes, there is Brand. He's probably one of the best, if not the best character that you're going to be seeing. But you're going to be seeing 2 water characters, though, every single match. So it's going to help a ton when you climb if you have a good wood character to be able to deal with that. And I think she's one of the best, if not the best. Now, with her out of the way, let's talk about the next hero. And I think it is, and she's very similar to EVERA. She's the fire version of that. So she has this move here. Her ultimate is consumes 20% of this character's current health and deals 180% damage to all enemies, and grants a bonus turn upon defeat of an enemy. So I think she's going to be absolutely insane, especially in the early game. Probably one of the best early game characters for you, because she's going to be constantly getting her ult up again and again as you're clearing multiple waves of enemies. This part kind of drops off later on in the game, when you're trying to do a ton of damage, but it's be hard to actually finish them off, even though it's still really good, like late game. I'm just trying to say, like earlier on in the game, you're probably going to be relying on that a lot more. She has self-sustained here, deals 100% damage to all enemies, and then recovers health equal to 35% of the damage dealt. It's nice. She has 2 straight up built-in AoE moves into her kit, on a 3-turn cooldown there and on a 4-turn cooldown here, but that's actually not that bad, because normally that would be pretty long cooldowns. But if you look at her passive here, reduces all ability cooldowns by 1 turn upon the death of an enemy. So it makes it to where her cooldowns are pretty deceiving, especially when you reset, get a bonus turn, then you're going to be AoEing here, potentially killing someone else too. You might even have your ult up ready to go, but next time she goes around and has another turn. And then lastly, she has 100% damage to 2 enemies, which is a little unique. Not many characters have a basic that hits 2 enemies, and with a 50% chance to play defense down for 2 turns. A little bit of utility on there. Don't really like that too much on attackers. I would prefer like a buff on attackers, because then you wouldn't have to worry about a resistance check kind of thing, but she has good modifiers. She resets a ton. She's an AoE fire character, and I think those are going to be pretty useful for a long time in this game. It helps with Tupla if you're going to be farming Tupla as one of your first dungeons. She's really nice at clearing those waves in the beginning and then getting onto the boss. One thing you could argue why EVERA is better is that you do get an AoE fire character guaranteed in Zach here, and he's solid, so you can choose EVERA and then have the AoE fire at least for the short time in the beginning, whereas you're not doubling down on the same affinities, because in this game affinity bonus is massive because you get a 50% damage boost if you choose the right affinity. So having that kind of affinity spread might be a little bit better, and so if you want to have a really good start, I think EVERA might be one of the better choices there, so you can have a little bit better, your affinities are more spread around. That could be an argument against that. Just keep that in mind, even though I think Valeria is amazing, and she actually scales well into the late game, whereas Zachary is going to fall off pretty hard, even though he's still pretty useful. It's just when you have, S tier attack versus B tier attack, and then 180% modifier versus this 150%, you're going to notice a pretty massive damage difference between the two heroes, even though they are the same affinity. So then lastly on the list, I just kind of want to speed through these. I don't want to spend too much time on them. The last one, this one's going to be a little different. I think this is by far the biggest late game investment. It's going to make your early game progress significantly harder. She's amazing late game to guarantee this character, which is Mathasia. And what makes her so good is she's the only hero currently in the game that has a revive. And not only that, does she have a revive with a heal. This is pretty clutch here, where heals an ally and removes all negative effects from them. Healing skills with this character's max health. But this is the big part of her kit that's great, which is the abilities of all team members recover 5% health if the target has a positive effect. So if you have a buff on the character and they're going to heal 5% automatically, which is very clutch, especially in late game harder content, mainly Void Tower, harder bounties. I can see that being actually pretty clutch here if you're trying to push through some of these harder bounties here. There's a lot of really hard hitting characters there, but mainly it's going to be pushing through this. Mathasia is pretty popular in this section, especially paired with Brand, because Brand is going to guarantee a buff, so not only a shield but then a heal there as well. But she's obviously not going to be great at helping you level on early. But if you're a person that started in the beginning and maybe had access to Nathalia, because every character in every account in the beginning of the game got access to Nathalia, so you have a good nuker already, then you can throw her on and have a guaranteed good character late game that's going to help you push that hard content, but you don't need it in a legendary hero at the moment because a lot of accounts already got this hero here. So that's the third option, in my opinion, if you really want to kind of plan for late game and not really rely on a nuker that's good early. You can just rely on Zach. You'll have Zach. Connor is another good character you get guaranteed. And if you're willing to kind of struggle a little bit early on compared to other people, it might be worth it, in my opinion. Because Mathasia is one of the best heroes, and it's really hard to replace her, in my opinion, for what she does in being able to help you clear some of that content. Even though there is a lot of accessible early game healers that, maybe it's not worth it. So, because you do get, also, eventually you'll get Zalux, who's a great clear of, AoE, and he's green. So you can argue that, why go ever early game when you can get Zalux guaranteed, and he's going to help clear stuff, and he's easy to gear because of his passive that gives him 30% crit rate guaranteed. So that's another argument there. But I think those three heroes are the main ones that are worth considering, in my opinion. And another one that I want to touch on, I might as well just touch on all of them, just really quick on why I don't think they're the way to go. The popular one, the one I ended up going with, is Hydri. And this one, a lot of the content people will say, or a lot of content creators early on, and maybe she was better on beta or something like that. I never played the betas, but I don't think she's a good choice, in my opinion, especially if you started in the beginning when you got Nathalia. Nathalia is just a better character. But the reason why I think she's worse than EVERA and Valeria is mainly her modifiers. 100% damage to all enemies, and that's why I wanted to touch on her after, so we can appreciate just how much worse this modifier is compared to EVERA and Valeria. They have way better modifiers. And so it's 100% AoE here, and then 100% AoE here with speed down, and then a 50% chance of granting a bonus attack that deals 50% damage to all enemies, which is nowhere close to the amount of damage you could be generating with EVERA or Valeria. Then she has 100% damage to an enemy with a 50% chance to apply speed down here with her A1. But if we look at her base stats, she has C tier speed, which you really start to notice when you start to push Ashe, and then her whole kit revolves around reducing their speed. Why are you giving the character that is reducing the enemy's speed the slowest speed? So we're going to be expected to either build her all damage and just ignore that debuff, or have to make her way faster than everyone to reduce their speed to help other characters out, which is going to really nerf her damage because you're focusing so much on her kit in making her faster than her very slow passive. It's just massively counterintuitive. That alone, with just blatantly horrible modifiers compared to any other AoE nuker in the game, it makes it very hard for me to recommend this character. Like, very hard. So that's why I say pass on Hydri, especially if you were able to guarantee Nathalia in the beginning. Because Nathalia is just infinitely better at what she does. And then another hero in the game that you can get in the beginning is going to be MULHEX here. I think he's not a bad character, and I think he's actually pretty solid for what he does, but there's other characters that are just better. You know, Nathalia would be a better blue hero, even though she's not guaranteed. At this point, I would probably pick this guy over Hydri, in my opinion, even though I think he does need books to really start to notice how good he is. But like, let's look at his kit here, where he has 200% damage to an enemy and applies defense down for 2 turns, grants attack up to all team members for 2 turns. He's more of a support. And look at this massive cooldown. In the beginning of the game, when you don't have access to books, you're really going to feel this. So it's really hard to justify ever picking this character, especially compared to VALERIA and EVERA. And then also later on in the game, the 2 characters that get used a ton late game on arena offense, this is way later on in the game, are going to be EVERA and VALERIA and Mathasia. Those are the ones that really get used a ton. And then there's another one that gets used a ton later on too in HECTOR, but we'll talk about him here in a second. But we have this A2 here, Rampage, deals 100% damage to all enemies. If this character has attack up, then launches a bonus attack with this ability. So this right here, especially with you, when you have this part where you're already gaining the attack up, or you have Connor on the team, especially early game, you're going to be taking advantage of this double attack on the A2 a ton, and it's going to hit twice as hard as anything that Hydri does. So out of even the water characters, I would pick MULHEX over Hydri in my opinion. But and then lastly, we have the 100% damage to an enemy with a 30% chance to apply defense set for 2 turns. I think this is totally fair to do because this guy's really not going to be someone that's going to be your damage dealer. So building focus on him, I think is totally fine because you're going to get the defense down plus attack up on here, and you're going to be getting the defense down on his A1. So putting a little focus on him to make sure that these land kind of nice. And he's also super survivable and faster than Hydri as well at B tier speed. And then lastly, his passive, any attack by an ally affected by attack up against an enemy reduces this character's ability cooldowns by 1 turn. So he's totally just a support hero, and that's going to really benefit from the characters you're guaranteed with, because you're going to have him plus Zach plus Connor, which is going to have a ton of synergy because Connor's going to be giving attack up constantly. He's going to give himself a attack up constantly. So you're going to be able to leverage this a whole bunch in the early game. And I think he's actually going to be pretty solid if you pick the right heroes with him. Another good choice, but I still think those other 3 are on a tier of their own. Now let's get into HECTOR here. The reason why I don't like HECTOR in the beginning, I think he's great at what he does. He's just a good overtime damage dealer. That's going to be great for the guild boss, but it's not going to help you clear content early. He's going to be actually pretty bad at clearing content early and getting you progressing. That's the only reason why I don't like this guy, but he's pretty niche in what he does. Is he's only really good at one of the, because the guild boss rotates in Infinity every week. 1 week out of 3, he's going to be amazing. But then other than that, he's only really used in Tupla as well in that dungeon. That's going to be way later. You're not going to farm dungeons for quite a while. So you're going to have a pretty big feels bad on a hero here for quite a while until you can get to that point of being able to farm the dungeon or farm the guild boss and actually care that your damage is really high, because you're going to need to get all the gear to make any damage anyway. So you're going to want to progress faster. So that's why I'm not the biggest fan of picking HECTOR, because he just doesn't do the early game job that he's supposed to. You're going to be relying on all these other heroes. And even when you get him to that point, he's pretty niche. He's not as versatile as like a Mathasia that's going to be you can't even replace Mathasia. Whereas him, other damage dealers are going to do a good job. He just does them a little better in his one particular role of against the green boss. So it's very niche at what he does, but he does it well. It's just, I just don't think when you have all these other options, it's ever worth picking him. But you didn't get a bad character if you decided to get him, in my opinion. I don't want people to feel bad that they got their particular hero in the beginning with the rookie summons, because they do have uses. Except probably this guy. This is probably the least useful out of all the picks if you ended up getting him. But he's not bad by any means. He just has not that much going for him comparatively. So he has S tier attack, but he has C tier speed just like Hydri. He has a very high percentage nuke on his ultimate here, which is 250, 280% when you have him booked. Refreshes this character's trait ability if the enemy is killed. You get that by revives this character upon death, heals them for 30% health and resets the cooldowns of all active abilities. So it's a pretty solid trait to make sure, but in the beginning of the game, you're going to have this massive cooldown. It's going to be 7 seconds. It's going to be a big feels bad because he doesn't have that much AoE. He only has it on his A2 here, where it deals 90% damage to all enemies, plus 45% extra damage to the main target. This attack deals bonus damage to targets under a negative effect. Like in the beginning of the game, you're going to feel a lot better with Zac than you are with this guy, in my opinion, except when he ults and he does a ton of damage to one character. But there's a lot of just waves over and over that putting your best gear on Zac is probably going to be the better choice for quite a while. And then he even has less functionality, in my opinion, because on a single target, Hector's going to do more damage in the long run. I would say maybe he's going to get usage in Tupla as just a good damage dealer for one of the dungeons here. He could be a good single target arena nuker, but he's so slow that it's gonna be tough to make sure he goes before the enemy. So it's difficult to find a good use for him. But this is probably going to be the main spot for him, being able to help with Dupla and farm some good gear here if you have to. Because ideally, you're going to choose Queen of Tides or Ash Magisteria in the early game, or as one of the main dungeons to farm first. So recommending Tupla is kind of a feels bad because the gear here, the sets are not nearly as good as the sets you get here. And especially Queen of Tides, if you can get some Poisoners, one of the easier dungeons to focus, and it has really good gear in it. So that's pretty much it when it comes to picking your main legendary hero. I want to cover all the other ones so you can kind of get an idea of my logic on that, but the main three are going to be EVERA, Valeria, and Mathasia. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think about your rookie summon. And with that, guys, I am out. Peace.